The war on Gaza takes devastating economic toll on both Israel and Palestine. Goldman Sachs reduces the likelihood of the United States entering a recession in 2025. And the Eurozone retail sales increased by 0.2% in August, marking the first monthly rise in 3 months. Welcome to the Economic Bulletin, your source of a comprehensive coverage and expert insights on key updates regarding the pivotal economic trends, in addition to financial shifts. We begin with Gaza, where a year of conflict has severely disrupted the local economy, leaving residents in a state of devastation and uncertainty. Welcome back. The Bank of Israel has estimated that the cost of the war on Gaza will rise to 250 billion shekels by the end of 2025, although the estimate does not account for the added expenses of the Israeli military's aggression in Lebanon. Israel's finance ministry has revealed that the direct cost of funding the war on Gaza through August has reached 100 billion shekels, equivalent to $26.3 billion. Meanwhile, Israeli officials estimated the war cost to be $66 billion last year, which is equivalent to 12% of Israel's GDP. Rising war expenses, troop mobilization, and bombing campaigns are intensifying Israel's fiscal challenges, with the budget deficit now at 8.3% of the GDP, exceeding the initial projection of 6.6%. Data from Israel's central bank shows that foreign holding of Israeli bonds dropped from 14.4%, nearly 80 billion shekels in September 2022, to 8.4% at 55.5 billion shekels in July 2023. According to Copley Fund Research, equity investors are retreating, with international holdings of Israeli stocks hitting a decade low after cuts began accelerating in May 2023. Foreign direct investments dropped 29% in 2023, the lowest since 2016, and rating agencies warn that the war may worsen future investment prospects. The Gaza Government Media Office estimates $33 billion in direct financial losses from the ongoing war on the Strip, with Israel's military operations crippling Gaza's economy. Industry, farms, and markets have been systemically destroyed, causing severe financial damage. UNCTAD reports that nearly 2/3 of jobs have been lost since the war began, with unemployment soaring from 45% to 80%. Poverty has doubled to 100%, and up to 96% of Gaza's agricultural assets have been wiped out, worsening food insecurity. Additionally, 82% of businesses have ceased operations, leaving Gaza's economy in ruins. The war on Gaza has cast a shadow over the economies of both Israel and Palestine, but the disparity in damage is staggering. What are the impacts on each economy? A report released by Brown University's Cost of War project reported that the United States has allocated a record $17.9 billion in military aid to Israel since the onset of the war on Gaza, which has exacerbated tensions throughout the Middle East. In addition, U.S. military operations in the region have seen an increase of $4.86 billion in 2023. This funding includes expenses related to a Navy-led initiative aimed at countering strikes on commercial shipping by Yemen's Houthi rebels, who are acting in solidarity with Hamas. The ongoing war on Gaza has sparked widespread boycotts of global brands accused of supporting Israel. From fast food chains closing stores to major corporations facing financial losses, the ripple effect of these consumer actions are being felt worldwide.
In a world increasingly interconnected by social movements, the power of boycotting has surged as a potent tool for demanding justice and accountability. Boycotting has a storied history as a method of non-violent protest. By withdrawing support from practices and entities perceived as unjust and violent, individuals and groups aim to disrupt the status quo and catalyze change. This approach not only raises awareness, but also fosters a collective consciousness about the implications of economic and social choices. The economic ramifications of boycotting can be profound, where this economic tool can lead to tangible outcomes, influencing the behavior of institutions, corporations, and maybe countries. The outbreak of the war on Gaza has prompted waves of boycotts of global brands accused of supporting Israel, whose military actions have led to the deaths of thousands of Palestinian civilians and displaced millions. The boycott is gaining momentum, putting multinational corporations in the spotlight for their perceived ties to Israel. The impact is especially pronounced in various countries. In Malaysia, a fast food franchise operator is seeking $1.3 million in damages from the boycott, citing reputational harm and significant financial losses. The numbers tell a stark story. One major fast food chain has closed nearly 100 branches, reflecting the shift in consumer sentiment. Another global food giant took the bold step of buying out its Israeli outlets after facing backlash for providing free products to Israeli forces. Last quarter, this corporation reported its first global sales decline since 2020, with profits dropping 12% year-on-year. A prominent coffee chain is also feeling the pressure, with profits down 2% in North America and a dramatic 23% decline internationally. As the boycott gains steam, companies across industries face the daunting task of managing public opinion. As the war continues, consumers are wielding their power like never before. The question remains, will these brands adapt, or will they crumble under the weight of public sentiment?
Joining us today to discuss the economic repercussions of the war on Gaza after 1 year of conflict is Meher Nicholas Frizili, director of the Frauget Square Forum in Washington and former advisor to the World Bank. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
A pleasure.
How do the economic impacts of the war differ between Israel and the Palestinian territories, especially considering the reported 4.1% decline in Israel's GDP versus 81% drop in Gaza's GDP?
I'm delighted once again to join you today. It is clearly comparing apples and oranges. So, of course, the economic and financial and physical suffering is on the Palestinian and Lebanese side, and Israel, being a much, much richer by many multiple countries, is not feeling the same kind of pressure. But in finance and economics, symbols are important. So we use a lot the word, perception. So financial markets are driven not always by physical, economic, industrial reality, but by perception of risk and return. And so, before the war started, and you can say the war started precisely a year ago on October 7, when Hamas attacked Israel, and then Israel launched that terrible war, which has been escalating since then. So before the war started a year ago, Israel, according to IMF and World Bank estimates, was due to rise, the GDP of Israel was due to rise by 3.5, 3.7% in 2024, which is a very good growth level. Now, a year later, most experts have cut down their estimates to 1% or 1.1%. So really divided by 3, the expected GDP growth. But it's not the most important issue. I think the most important issue for the Israeli government and for the Israeli financial sector is the fact that the two big Anglo-American government debt rating agencies, that's Moody's and S&P, they have downgraded the status of Israeli debt, Israeli government debt, twice in the past 12 months. And that hurts a lot because, of course, the Israeli government and Israeli companies, Israeli private sector companies, when they want to borrow money on the financial market in dollars, they have to pay a much higher interest rate. So it's very bad for the Israeli economy. But there's more than that. There is the symbolism. So now Israel is rated by Moody's and S&P approximately at Baa1. What does it mean, triple B plus or Baa1? It means the quality of Israeli debt is similar to Thailand or Bulgaria, which is very bad. It's a humiliation for Israel to be considered the same as Bulgaria or Thailand. So that shows you that the news
The
is not
situation
good.
is worse, which kind of leads me to the next question, sir. As you said, it's been a year, and now it seems that the scope of the war is widening, reaching other places such as Lebanon. What's the effect of this? How can this impact the Israeli economy if this war escalates and keeps expanding?
I think it's going to be bad. It's going to be very bad for the Israeli economy for the next 2 months. So I think, by early 2025, the war will be over. This is where I'm maybe a little less pessimistic than average. I think the war will not drag on for eternity. So, the Israeli central bank is very conservative, and the Israeli central bank is assuming that the war will continue until the summer of 2025. I don't think so. I think by January of next year, in the next 2-3 months, the war will be over, because the keys to ending the war lie in Washington, D.C., not in Jerusalem or Beirut so really, I think, when a new American president enters the White House, then the war will stop. Just to give you an idea of, between Lebanon, it's interesting to compare Lebanon and Israel. So in Lebanon, the situation is really horrible, very bad, beyond the figures. So I think the macroeconomic situation in Beirut is much worse than the official macroeconomic figures published by the Lebanese government or the IMF. But at any rate, the crisis started in Lebanon in September 2019,
yes,
5 years ago.
Yes. We're trying to focus mainly right now, because it's been a year since the onslaught on Gaza. So we're trying to focus on both the Israeli side and the Gaza side. So if you could talk to us, like we shift to Gaza, and talk to us about the long-term implications for food security in Gaza, given the massive destruction that Gaza has seen when it comes to agricultural assets.
Yeah, here it's really tragic. And once again, it's even worse than Lebanon. The macroeconomic figures produced by the Hamas government in Gaza or by the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, reality is much worse than the figures. So officially, in the West Bank and Gaza, GDP per capita is $3,500. I doubt the figure. I think in reality it's less. And of course, now it's 80% less in Gaza, so which means mass famine. It means really people dying of hunger. It means hundreds of thousands of children dying of hunger in Gaza. And there's nothing that macroeconomic figures can capture, that level of poverty and destruction. And also donors. So, the European Union, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Abu Dhabi, they gave billions, tens of billions of dollars to build infrastructure in Gaza, hospitals, schools, maternity wards. All that is destroyed. So it's also sending a message to the donors, to the Egyptians, the Saudis, the Europeans, sending a very negative message, because all the assets, all the tangible goods, all the infrastructure, transportation, healthcare, all that was destroyed. And this is really a tragedy beyond any macroeconomic measure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mehel Nicholas Frizzelli, former advisor for the World Bank, for your insights on the situation on the ground. We move on to the United States, where Goldman Sachs has reduced the likelihood of the United States entering a recession in the next year, lowering its estimates by 5 percentage points to 15%. This adjustment follows the latest employment report that showed better than expected data. Goldman Sachs chief U.S. economist Jan Heitzo has noted that the September employment data has reset the labor market narrative and alleviated concerns about a rapid weakening in labor demand. The firm continues to project a series of rate cuts, anticipating a terminal rate between 3.25% and 3.5% by June 2025. Moving to Europe, data from Eurostat has revealed that the Eurozone retail sales increased by 0.2% in August, marking the first monthly rise in 3 months. This growth follows a flat performance in July and aligns with market expectations. On a year-on-year basis, retail sales rebounded by 0.8%, recovering from a 0.1% decline in July. In the EU27, retail sales volume increased by 0.3% month-on-month and 1% compared to the same period last year. French Central Bank Chief François Villeroy de Galhau expects the European Central Bank to cut interest rates on October 17th due to weak economic growth, raising concerns that inflation may fall below the 2% target. Villeroy noted that possibilities of a rate cut this month as inflationary pressures ease faster than expected. Villeroy also forecasted additional cuts in 2024, predicting that the ECB would reach a neutral rate, neither stimulating nor slowing growth by 2025, provided inflation stabilizes at 2%. In the energy sector, Chevron announced that it is selling its assets in the Athabasca oil sands and Duvaney shale to Canadian Natural Resources for $6.5 billion as part of its divestiture strategy. This all-cash transaction, expected to close in the fourth quarter, aligns with Chevron's plan to divest $10 billion to $15 billion in assets by 2028. The assets located in Alberta contributed to 84,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day to Chevron's production in 2023. We move to commodities, where China's central bank has stated that its gold reserve sat at 72.8 million fine troy ounces at the end of September, with their value increasing to $191.47 billion from $182.98 billion at the end of August. China's central bank did not purchase gold for its reserves for the fifth consecutive month in September, primarily due to rising gold prices. The People's Bank of China was the world's largest official buyer in 2023, but the bank has now paused purchases after 18 consecutive months. Gold prices edged up on Monday after escalations in the Middle East pushed investors to safe haven assets, while traders awaited the inflation data this week for further clues on the Federal Reserve's rate cut path. Spot gold was up 0.2% at $2,658.07 per ounce, and the U.S. gold futures edged up about 0.4% at $2,677.90 per ounce. Oil prices extended gains on Monday, with Brent nearing $80 to build on last week's steepest weekly jump since early 2023. The rise was driven by fears of a wider Middle East conflict and potential disruption to exports from the major oil-producing region. Brent crude futures rose 1.4% to $79.14 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude futures was up 1.55% at $75.53. In the markets, the benchmark 10-year U.S. Treasury yield climbed to 4% on Monday following robust labor market data that dispelled recession concerns, prompting a reduction in rate cut expectations. U.S. markets are now focused on Thursday's CPI report, but Friday's job data, which revealed the highest job growth in 6 months, continues to drive the market tone. Treasury yields rose while U.S. equity initially gained, supported by strong jobs reports. The U.S. dollar also strengthened, especially against the yen, as markets recalibrated around reduced recession risks. That's all for now. Here's a roundup of today's key headlines. The war on Gaza takes devastating toll on both Israel and Palestine. Goldman Sachs reduces the likelihood of the United States entering a recession in 2025. And Eurozone retail sales increased by 0.2% in August, marking the first monthly rise in 3 months. That's all for today's economic bulletin on Q News. Stay connected for more updates and news here.